everyone, welcome to another random talk video for Sunday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss whether or not books are relevant within entertainment. Now, I don't mean as to are they relevant pertaining to being made into a movie or used in a script, but I'm talking about just relevancy as far as entertainment is concerned, or basically what I'm asking sort of and trying to answer in this video is whether or not books really do hold a substantial amount of weight when it comes to generating an audience. Now, basically, there are a few things that have happened over the years that I think have resulted in books becoming kind of obsolete. With the surgence of cinema and of films and of other forms of media like television and music, things like that, books have, I think, become less of a part of entertainment as they were, not like how they were in the past. For example, 18th century, 19th century, even further back, there have been a substantial amount of people that took in as their form of entertainment books, because there was no television, there was no really music unless you were to go to a concert and actually see the person live. There was no theaters. Well, the only thing that I guess could have, again, been the alternative would have been stage theaters as opposed to movie theaters. You would have to go at a certain time, and it wasn't really as accessible. Books were fairly accessible back in the day, although they again were a big moneymaker for those who got into writing books. So it really played a huge benefit back in the days when there wasn't television, there wasn't movies, there wasn't other forms of entertainment like online video. When there wasn't any of that, there were books, and books maintained to be the oldest form of sort of real art form, I guess, that came after drawings, because drawings were a part of caveman times, and once we started getting a grip of language, that's when really books surfaced. So really, it really was the first art form to be of huge substance, because with art you're sort of limited to just painting a scene or multiple scenes, whereas within a book there's a lot of description and detail. So it really was the first form of really writing that captured people. And we still require people to take English and understand literature and things like that within high school and university. So it still holds a substantial weight as far a substantial amount in the academia community. But as far as in general, I think books are not as popular and not as really spoken of, unless you go into certain circles where they would love to talk about books, because largely other forms of entertainment have taken over. And I think there's sort of a reasoning for that, and I think That's why there's a lot of people out there who don't like really reading because they find these other forms to be, I guess, a lot more engaging. Um, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that since the virtualization of certain medias like television and movies, we're much more visual generation than what we were in the past. And so we're able to show things clearly onto a screen, whereas before there were even movies, people had to sort of create their own understanding of what something looked like because a book is limited into showing you things unless it has really pictures, which majority of books really don't have pictures unless you're talking children's literature. Um, the thing about the books is that we did see sort of this compromise with books and being put into popular films, for example, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Twilight, the list goes on of books that have been adapted into films, and some more well known, some more underground, not as well known. But it seems like there's a lot of borrowing from films from books, and I think the reasoning is there's a potential to get a bigger audience. Um, and I think that has to do with the fact that we are a visual generation. We are not a read and comprehend and create our own imagination generation. We like things to be kind of more clear cut um, than in the past, where we've kind of allowed things to kind of drag, and we're a little bit more direct, I think, now, and as a result, we like things to be a lot more quicker. Like, for example, with a book, it can take you days, maybe even months to go through and read everything. Whereas within a movie, it's just 2 hours of your time. So I think that's another thing too that turns people off from enjoying books is because with a film or with a television show, there's a certain significant amount of time, but it's specific and it's not as lengthy, and there's again in a similar way you can take breaks from watching a film, but at the same time it's not a huge significant amount of your time, and it's not like you have to grasp everything and develop your own interpretation, because with film you're really seeing somebody else's interpretation, and with a television show and with a music video too, you're really seeing what this person came up with or what these people together came up with. Whereas with a book, you have to kind of visualize what the character is and what the character is really going through. Even though, again, books are intended to be um, for the audience to sort of absorb what's going on, but at the same time, there's sort of a thing with books where you can sort of interpret things your own way and gain a lot of insight. And but the problem with that is you have to use more of your brain. So I think that's something that I think deters people from enjoying books is the fact that the comprehension level is just too much, and it's too much of a time waster. It's not as convenient as watching a film. And I think that's why you see all of these popular um, books being transformed into films, because they know that they can grasp a bigger audience. And yes, books are popular, and there's books that do become popular, and they do have an excessive amount of people reading, but they're not as, I think, relevant today as film and and other forms of entertainment like online videos um, and music videos and things that pertain to being entertainment that's based around visual. Uh, and I think that has to do with the fact that we are very digitalized. We are very um, focused on having something being presented to us as an art form. And I think that's why books have become less important. And usually, um, there is more of a heavily emphasis on math and science and not so much English and history. And there's reason for that. I mean, we do need scientists and mathematicians in this world. And and then and again, it's sort of the same thing. The generations change into um, what's what skills are marketable to a future generation. And what we're seeing nowadays, at least, is that books are not as they're not as important, I think. Especially considering the fact that you can just go to a used bookstore and you can get books for like $1. And yes, there's still Barnes and Nobles around there that charge excessive amount for a book, but by and large, most books are fairly accessible and pretty cheap. And heck, you could even rent a book from the library, so it's without even paying anything. So it's become very easy for people to access books, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not as relevant as other forms of media that do cost a little bit more. For example, to gain access to the internet, you have to pay a fee every month. If you want television, the same thing. If you want to watch a movie, the same thing. So there is this demand, and there's still a lot of people that go and see films within theaters, although I think that's sort of diminishing as well, because we're seeing sort of internet kind of taking over, and heck, you can even go online on your TV now. Like, sometimes TVs have Wi-Fi even built in. So I think we're seeing a less comprehensive generation and a more visually based generation. And as a result, I think that's why we're seeing mostly books being adapted into film. And I would say that probably the films end up being the more talked about, the more recognized, the more praised than really the books. But again, there's exceptions to that. I think obviously Harry Potter, they would probably say that the books are a lot more interesting. But I think there is this huge appeal that comes in when you can make a successful adaptation. And I think that goes for saying with the film series like Lord of the Rings. It became one of the most highest grossing franchises or trilogies of all time. It just goes to show that we are really geared to being this visual generation. And again, the fact that books are available easily on tablets and Kindles and things like that, that Barnes & Noble really adapted to well, which Borders didn't do, and what resulted in Borders going bankrupt, shows you that we are computerized, we are digital, we are not even reading from a traditional book anymore. We're reading from our devices, and I think that just shows it just shows you how easily accessible these things are. And usually when I think you get Kindle or something like that, usually the books are a lot cheaper when you buy them online as opposed to going out and actually buying a book from a store. So we're less more feely with books and more just about just scrolling through it and reading through it. So there's a lot of things I think that can be discussed when it comes to this topic, as to whether or not books are relevant. Are they important? I think they are important in getting the ball rolling for ideas, and for gaining, again, an audience. But I think largely now that audience really goes to the book's advantage if there can be an adaptation made, because then more people will get into reading the book, which I think in turn these medias are sort of going side by side with each other, as opposed to kind of working against each other. But at the same time, I still feel like that we are becoming a more visual generation, and we're not relying so much on book telling for storytelling, but more for films as our books, as our means to understanding the world. And I think that in a way that's a good thing. It could be a bad thing too. I mean, I think we should appreciate books a little bit more maybe than what we do now. But I think there's a lot that can be generated from having conversation. But I think that's really all I can say, though, about the topic. I just think that, in a way, yes, their books are becoming less relevant, but they still, I think, remain the important starting point for generating ideas. And I hope that still books remain relevant. But I think with the huge visual revolution that occurred with starting film and television, I think as a result we've seen less of an investment within literature. And I hope that they can exist side by side, but again, I think it's not as big of a, I don't think books are not going to have that same relevance as they once did. Because when you have alternative forms, people will choose whichever they feel suits them. And I think for this generation, largely that's movies and visual mediums. But I still think that it's important for people to read and for people to learn from books. I just don't know how relevant they'll be within the next generations or not. But I think that's really all I can say. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.